The Brooklyn Nets come up short on the road in Phoenix. We take a look at the fourth quarter comeback that did not quite get across the line. Some of the X's and O's around this game that consistently gave the Nets trouble on the defensive end. And once again, where is our concern level as the Nets continue to search for their first win without Kevin Durant?
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. Over there, you're going to find Doug Norrie, owner-operator of DFSR, for all your daily fantasy sports rankings from DraftKings to FanDuel. He's got you covered. I'm Adam Arnbrick, breaking down the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast with my boy Andy Mack. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day, free on all those great platforms, and tell you that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. And Doug, another game, another loss, with a little bit of a different style, though. The Nets certainly at least try to mount a comeback here. We're going to break this game down in a few different ways, but starting in the fourth quarter. And listen, I didn't expect it, but they at least made it interesting in that final session.
Yeah, man, this was it's one of these games that, again, you come away with somewhat mixed feelings. Obviously, the primary feeling is disappointment. It's a loss at the end of the year. It's just basically a WNL league, and the wins either need to stack up or the losses stack up. And so in the end, it's a loss to an undermanned Suns team. They do make a valiant, kind of like heroic. That's putting it a little, being a little overboard, but they mount a comeback in the fourth quarter and look like they really want to take the game. They outscore them 38-23. We'll go through sort of what happens in some of those final sequences. But so from that standpoint, you're like, hey, signs of life. Like, this can be something that can be built on. But in the end, it's just 3 straight losses. It's looked really bad at times. Oh, excuse me, 4 straight losses. Jeez.
Easy to lose track when they're just piling them up.
There you go. They're already getting away from me. You can take some things away from this game, but in the end, I mean, this is a Suns team that doesn't have, I know they don't have Kevin Durant. The Suns don't have Chris Paul or Devin Booker. So it's not at some point, you really can't make excuses here, even if the fourth quarter looked like they at least got sort of mini resuscitated in an effort to get back into the game, stopping it from being an utter and totally embarrassing blowout.
Yeah, by the way, like, Cameron Johnson was in the game for the Suns. It's his first game of the season for him. After
it looked like he hadn't missed any time when he just walking into the threes. But yeah.
He goes, excuse me. Turns out I got no problems at all getting back into the rhythm here. But to your point, so the fourth quarter, there's a couple of things. The biggest of which, so they managed to surge all the way back, and a lot of it is predicated on Kyrie Irving. Yeah. He does a lot of the things that we know that Kyrie Irving can do. Now, maybe we save it for the back end of the episode in terms of my concern level that he didn't do more of it sooner, because that could always be helpful when you're trailing by almost 20 points throughout large portions of this game. But without him, you have absolutely no chance to come back in that fourth quarter. So he does a lot of the heavy lifting, and really the key sequence down the stretch here ends up becoming Nicholas Claxton, the foul, going to the line where he needs to miss in order to give the Nets a chance. And we know, so if you don't know, you need to touch some portion of the rim in order for the foul shot to count. And it's always a hard ask for someone like Nicholas Claxton, for bigs, to do a thing that they barely do well when you need them to make the free throws, and then say, now specifically clank this thing and whatever. So I don't put anything on him there, but it specifically played a role in the fact that Phoenix knew, hey, if we get into a pinch here as Kyrie's going off, this is our safety valve. They pulled it, and Claxton, the Nets, could not capitalize on it.
Yeah, look, this game also highlights in some ways over like sort of higher level concerns we have around the team, right? Like, on the one hand, it took Kyrie 3.5 quarters ish to kind of wake up and start playing, not playing, but like to actually start getting to the basket. And to some degree that you could probably say, like, Phoenix might have thought that game was over for them. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes teams just take their foot off the gas. With the Claxton thing, teams are going to know, and we've talked about this multiple times in the past, teams are going to know that the Nets have 2 substandard free throw shooters on the court, possibly at times in closing lineups. And that's going to be Simmons wasn't here in this game, but and Claxton, that you are going to be able to foul a Claxton, foul a Simmons, or hack a Clax, hack a Simmons like late game. We've seen it a few times where teams know that this can be a strategy that wasn't definitively a strategy, but clearly it was good coaching for Monte Williams to know, like, hey, if this doesn't go down, get that foul going because this guy can't be trusted at the free throw line. So it's just one of these things that, like, I don't know, a loss is a loss. And we probably won't think about this too much in a few weeks, but this is also these concerns that we have. It's like, what does it take to get this team to wake up sometimes early, right? What does it get to wake up Kyrie early and get it like into some efficient scoring? And can they be a high caliber team in the playoffs with guys that can't make free throws late? And so like, there's other concerns here, but it is sometimes interesting how one game on the schedule can highlight maybe some like larger concerns you have for the team in general.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Claxton played 35 minutes. He was 9 of 12, 20 points, 11 rebounds. He had the 3 blocks again. His streak, I can't remember what's up to now, maybe 6 or 7 games with at least 3 blocks that he now has on the defensive end. All of those things are great. And listen, if he isn't trying to miss it, maybe he makes it and then he shoots 50% at the line for the game. So, like, I'm not going to hang my hat on this thing because I think there's 17 other things the team should have done so that this wasn't a problem against this specific Phoenix Suns team. But I will say, I said maybe later, I'll talk about it now. Like, Kyrie Irving, you don't get to do this. You don't get to have 3.5 quarters like this. And it's so hard because in the fourth quarter, you lose by 20 plus if Kyrie Irving isn't there. But so, like, it's this weird juxtaposition of, if not for you, it's not a close game late. But maybe because of you, you're getting absolutely trounced for 3.5 quarters. Like, we've talked about this in the absence of Kevin Durant. And you and I have talked about this at a high level around guard positions, etc. It's hard for me to accept that a player of his caliber can be somewhat missing from action for 3 quarters of this game before really dialing it up. That is borderline unacceptable, even beyond any X's and O's that we're going to talk about or anything else in this game.
So, okay, I agree with you. I will say in basketball, it's funny how basketball works because, like, I say this often to people, like, around projections and stuff. And when people want to complain when a guy starts off poorly in a game, I'll often say, these are like the DFSR users and stuff. I'll say, hey, should they play the game out or should we just like call it as a loss right now? Right. So, like, this is to say that, like, the whole game is what counts, not just, and if you look over the course of the whole game, the numbers for him look fine, right? 30 points, 7 and 7. He's only a -2 on the game. Like, ends up being kind of ish efficient from the field, but not really. But, like, this is the kind of game where you're like, okay, you think you're probably in the game if Kyrie has this, like, if he puts this up as his overall stat line, you think you're in the game, which they were. Now, the problem is with your eyes, you watch what happens for the first 3 quarters and you're like, the shots are super inefficient. He can't buy one, even on the ones that look pretty good. There's times where it was like Kyrie dribbling into traffic, bunch of nets just standing around, right? Like, doing nothing. And that's what you just absolutely hate to see. So I want to, like, stay true to what I believe to be the case often, was just like, hey, the whole game is what counts, not just, and if you get there on some of these numbers, like, you can't just wipe that off the slate in terms of, like, having a good game or not. Yeah. But I know what you're saying because we watched it for the first basically 3 quarters when they're getting absolutely smoked because Kyrie can't make a shot. And if Kyrie can't make a shot, they're not going to win. Like, and they actually probably will get blown out a lot of games, right? Because that's going to happen. So I don't know. Like, I don't want to trash him too hard because the fourth quarter does count, right? But I know what you're saying. There is a tone setting that happens with him. And when that tone is not set early, you are going to find yourself without Kevin Durant in massive catch-up situations because they just can't, they don't have the firepower to maintain if he's going to be bad for 3 quarters.
And it's funny because I'll cap it off by saying the other way is in the fourth quarter when he's giving you the Herculean effort. It's the same thing in the other quarters when the shots aren't going down. So yes, they went down in the fourth quarter, but if they weren't, then it would imagine how much worse it would look. And
Well,
again,
okay,
it
yeah,
is
but
the
hold
total
on, but
game.
hold on. The only reason but they did go down. I know what you're saying.
No,
It's
no,
like
no.
it could.
My point is no. My point there is it's not so much about Kyrie, but about the tone setting and about getting everyone
Gotcha.
involved and playing a full team game. Is that yes? When those shots go down in the fourth quarter, it is good and you love it, and that's what you expect from Kyrie. But it doesn't change the fact that nobody else is any more involved than what they needed to have been for 3 quarters. And we've talked about that a lot, about superstars can always find the moment in the game when they take it over and they get theirs. Other players don't always do that. So in a second here, and this is, again, it's not a drag on Kyrie. It's just he's the guy now in the absence of Kevin Durant. And now coming up, we'll talk about.
You're right. It is a drag. It is a little bit of a drag, right? Like
Yeah.
it has to
I
be
know, I'm
a
trying
little
to
bit
hedge
of drag.
myself here. It is a bit of
No,
a drag.
no. I'm the one arguing with you. So like
Yeah,
it's not arguing with you, but I'm just like pushing back a little bit. But I'm with you too that this is also like completely unacceptable to play like this and to be forced into comeback situations. Okay, we're gonna get into all this in a second. We have more to talk about with some of the scheming things that the Nets did or didn't do in this game. I mean, a possible look ahead to the Jazz, look into what happened with Simmons as well. We'll get back into that next. But first, I'll tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. If you're a small business owner, maybe you're a hiring manager for a company, you know that success for you in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. Maybe you're like the Nets. You need maybe another on-ball creator that has a little size. Maybe you need a 3-and-D wing. Maybe you could use a drop center every once in a while, like we're going to talk about in a second. This is why you need LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently. You're going to match open roles with the people who have the skills, value, and experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. It's going to go beyond the resume data. They're going to look at insights from the job post, and they're going to match you with 875 million members. Not going to match you with every single one of them. They're going to pick the best ones out of that 875 million. You're not going to get it flooded with 875 million job requests. Don't worry about that. They just have a massive player pool that they're dealing with, and that's how they're going to be able to dial it in for your job. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, so you can already tell from segment number one that things are teetering here, teetering on the edge of
I mean, are they
disaster
even
looming
teetering?
here.
Sorry to interrupt you. Are they even teetering? I mean, like this is like we're full blown into last season now. These were the games they were supposed to win.
I know, and it's the funny part about the schedule. And we said, it's not going to be like this. They're better built for it. And if there had been different teams that you played over these 4 games outside of Boston, you maybe would have felt differently about the results and what happened, but it wasn't. It's teams that very much were set up for you to beat, to get some, quote, easy. We thought some easy wins here. And, we said at the top, the X's and O's inside of this game were frustrating. And I'll say, going back to the game prior, I mentioned it coming out of that game where you said, hey, Vaughn, there's some adjustments to be made here when you don't see success just from the production on the court, especially offensively. He seemed late on that. In this one, there was not adjustments to be had here around defending against specifically DeAndre Ayton in the paint.
There was an adjustment. They just didn't do it. Like this is
yes. Sorry, yes.
Like,
there was an answer. They chose not to fill in the blank.
Oh my God. I can't even believe it. Like, okay, so just if you weren't watching the game, that's very easy. Okay, 2 things you need to know about the Nets. They want to switch everything on defense, right? Like they have the personnel to switch everything on defense because, like, just as a high level, guys like Simmons and Claxton and Durant are made to guard basically 1 through 5 in 1 in a pinch and 5 in a pinch and everything in between, right? So like they want to employ a switch everything defense because a lot of times that's going to create like nice advantages for them. And it's a little bit easier to stick with your man or to be able to sort of not stick with your man, to pass along defensive assignments. The Suns use this completely to the Nets' advantage to the point where the Nets were so long to counter it that it was like completely maddening. And that was they waited till the Nets switched everything off of Ayton, and then they just had Ayton do whatever he wanted in the post time after time after time after time. It was unbelievable to watch how long it took the Nets to get away from this. Ayton ends up 11 for 20 from the field, and those 20 shots were the easiest shots you'll ever get in your life. 24 points. He gets on the boards too because he's able to get easily into the post, so he finishes with 24 and 14. They switched with guards. Oh my God. Okay. The Suns guards were Damian Lee and like Saban Lee And that's kind of it. And then like Mikal Bridges, who's not going to like crush you as an on-ball creator all the time. You don't have to switch these. Just keep your guys home and have Claxton a little bit more, not drop, but like at least stay attached to Ayton because he's the one guy that can deal with him. Yep. Every time it's Royce O'Neal on Ayton. It's everybody. It's everybody. Like it was unbelievable to watch this happen over and over and over again. Finally, they got away from it in the fourth where they went a little more zone. But like, I just don't even, you don't even have to be a basketball expert or an X's and O's expert, which I'm not even saying we are, but like, you just don't even have to be for this. It's so obvious what's happening. It happened time and time again with Ayton. They totally killed them. And I know people are going to come in and say, like, Nets need a center. This is why you can't deal with these big guys. We know this. That's in this case, it's not true. They just didn't play the right defense. Like they have a guy that could like at least speed bump Ayton in these situations. They just chose not to. This is not on Claxton. They should have switched this off of the switch everything scheme earlier when it was very obvious that they were just going to pick and dump him every single time. Anyway, rant over. It was unbelievable how this kept happening.
But it was a very justified rant because it's frustrating to watch a game like that and feel like, to your point, doesn't just with your eyes, just using the old eyeballs, looking at the screen and saying, why aren't you doing this? And if you're the Phoenix Suns, it's like, oh, at a certain point you go, I guess if they're going to keep doing it, we're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep giving it to us. Let's also then tie into this, and we can wrap in more decision making around it. But there was a stat line in here that you might be interested to hear about. And that was Ben Simmons, 18 minutes, -9 on the plus minus, 7 points, gave you 6 assists and 4 rebounds, and was kicked out of the game. He set a screen up on the off of the right top of the arc there. Put a little bit of his hip into it, got called for a foul, went to the bench, talked some S at the ref, and got kicked out. This is another problem. It's not X's and O's. It's just a problem. You don't have Kevin Durant. You're coming off these couple of games. And we talked about this on our quotes episode from Kyrie Irving, from Claxton, from Simmons, from Jacques Vaughn. And they all said all the right things, including Ben Simmons. Like, yeah, I know what I need to do. And I need to do. Talk about a rant. What are you doing? Like, you are the second best player on the team. You need to be attacking downhill, facilitating, setting up, helping take on the defensive assignment of DeAndre Ayton at times, or taking on the next big player so Nicholas Claxton can solely focus on speed bumping Ayton. And instead, you make it, it's a very, very self-serving moment there to vent a frustration. And this happens. It happens to players all the time. But you already have the tech. You know you're on thin ice. And by the way, when he picked it up, he knew he was going to get it, stood right up, started taking off his jersey and walking to the locker room. Like Ben Simmons was ready to be done with the game. So it's not one of those things where, oh man, it boiled over. This was like a calculated decision. I'm all set here. I don't want to be a part of this. There's a lot of things that really make me rant. That one was pretty brutal. After a series of games where we've been trying so hard to find the positives around Ben Simmons' game and say, hey, it's getting there. You can see it. We can keep focusing, keep driving. And then he checks out.
Yeah, I mean, up until this point, I joked about it during the game that it seemed like he was pissed off in general because it was coming out in different ways, right? Like he tried 2 poster dunks, one on Saric, and I actually can't remember who maybe the other was on Bridges. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Tried 2 of these neither of them went down, but whatever. I was like, whoa, okay. Like this is something because he was clearly trying to elevate up and over. I mean, Saric isn't even smaller than him, really, but like up and over defenders as he's getting to the rim.
Yeah.
And I was joking. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's just like mad because he was trying to get to the rim. It looked like he was kind of pissed off. I thought the pissed off aggression was going to be used for the good guys, but like in the end, it kind of does sink him. I get why he's frustrated. A couple of these fouls were brutal to the point where one, I think, wasn't even on him and it got called on him. Right. So I get why he's pissed off. That being said, the Nets need you too bad to get tossed, even with the 5 fouls, to get tossed after 18 minutes of this game. And I agree with you. It was like there was not really resistance to getting tossed. It was like, hey, I knew I was kind of asking for this in some way, right? On some level, I was asking for this. Yeah, I was kind of fine with his performance before that. I thought it was fairly aggressive. He was trying to get to the rim. It was, the whole game for the Nets was sloppy early, so I can't really totally put that on him. But yeah, to just get tossed in this fashion does show, oh man, I don't know. It's just a problem. It was like, it's indicative of sort of like some of the experience that it has been with Simmons. It's like finally the aggression gets turned on, but it maybe was just like too much or pointed in the wrong direction. I don't know. It was a frustrating thing.
And yeah, it's one of those, we talk about, it's not, what a player can or can't do from a basketball standpoint. And then we know specifically with Ben Simmons and anybody, hey, do you have it, right? The killer instinct, that late game kind of mentality. It also looks like Simmons maybe doesn't have that built into him of being able to dial it in, be focused in, right? Direct the aggression in the right places. Maybe it's a one-off thing for him. Hey, here's a little silver lining before we turn the page to the schedule ahead here. Per 36 minutes, that's a 14-point performance for him. So, would have taken 8 shots if he just stuck around. Unfortunately, didn't quite get there. We'll dive in on the upcoming schedule, and I'll ask Doug a high-level question around this Brooklyn Nets team next.
All right, before we get into that, gonna get into our friends over at Built Bar. It's for after the holidays. You're trying to get the healthy eating back on track. You're trying to reduce the fat. You're trying to reduce the calories, reduce the sugar. You got to get into Built Bar. They're 100% covered in chocolate. They've focused on the flavors like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, but they have the stats to back it up. For a good healthy snack, 130 calories, just 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. Get that energy up. You can grab them at built.com. You can also go to Walmart or Sam's Club to grab the boxes over there. They have 4-bar boxes. They have 13-bar boxes, all the different flavors, cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. They've covered you in the flavors. They covered you on the health, and they covered you with all the places to get it. Go to Sam's Club, go to Walmart, or go to built.com to get Built Bar today.
All right. So the last piece of this is looking ahead a little bit here. It's kind of funny because now there's no game you can look on the schedule and think anything other than maybe they'll lose, maybe they'll play well for half the game. Most likely it's going to be a disaster. Someone's not going to show up. By the way, inside of this game, it's like, and we just had this conversation with fans doing our post games after the podcast, which are great over on YouTube. Be sure to check those out. It's, hey, well, Joe Harris shows up 6-6, knocks down all of his triples, 16 points. Curry, 6-10 off the bench, 16 points. Cam Thomas, 6-11, gave you a spark. But Royce O'Neal, 1-7, 1-5 from deep. Like, you keep having these kind of things where when a couple of guys step up, when you have Kevin Durant, it's okay to trade off who's going to kind of carry the load. Without him, you need a level of consistency from everyone. High level here, Doug. Where are we now? Because this is striking. This is eerily similar to last year. Mm. I'll ask this question. I know you're going to say I'm not there yet or whatever.
I don't know, man. I might be.
Is there any concern around what Kevin Durant is thinking right now?
No, I'm not. Actually, that's interesting. I didn't think you were going to ask that. I'm concerned.
Last year it was after all of this when he reflected back on it. It was like, hey, when I went out and you watched the team basically be a dumpster fire, it let me know it's all me or nothing. And effectively, you've now had samples with Kyrie Irving even, and frankly, you can only put so much expectations on Ben Simmons. If you're Kevin Durant, you're once again going, oh, so it is all on me or nothing. I saw the stat. The Nets are 1 game below 500 without Kevin Durant. They're almost 40 games over with him. There is such a violent contrast in this team without Kevin Durant. I wondered where you were on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the on and off court stuff is pretty glaring. They're -3 and over -3.5 on the season with him off the court over now getting into a good sample size over 700 minutes. Obviously they're +6 on the season or 6 net rating with him on the season. I'm not so worried about that. I actually didn't think you were going to ask that part of it. I thought it was going to be more just like how worried are we about the team in general. Now you're making me worry about something I wasn't going to worry about. Now, I don't think this is a long enough run here for him to make any grand statements about the team, right? I think he doesn't think like that really. And so I'm actually not that concerned with it. I do get concerned though that 10 games from now, while he's still hurt, that we are looking at this backslide similar to last year. Like the Nets even shot well last night. You mentioned about Harris. They shot 42% from 3. Yeah. Like if you're going to lose games where you shoot 42% from 3, it's going to be hard to win. They actually shot pretty well. It's just that nothing else could really go right or wasn't timed correctly. But in terms of KD, I don't think I'm there. Well, who knows? I mean, I'm not Kevin Durant, but I don't think that would be the case. I do think for the way he looks at things, this actually probably is too short of a sample size, even just knowing how he thinks on a higher level about basketball. And we're staring down the barrel here. It doesn't get tons easier here. Like the Jazz are a tough out. Depending on when you listen to this, they play Friday evening. They get Golden State, who's going to be fully healthy for that game. Like they got everyone back now. So then they get Philly. Philly's got everyone back now. Detroit stinks, but that doesn't matter. They got smoked by the Spurs already. So you being bad.
On the schedule, you go, oh, but you'll win that game.
Well, I don't. Any NBA team can get. If you're going to lose to the Spurs, and the Paul and Booker less Suns, you can lose to anybody. So it's not, I can't look at the schedule. We did that once and that was a mistake. We looked at the schedule and banked wins for a team. Like that's almost all. Yeah. Like that's almost always
delicious.
a mistake.
No. So many free wins.
It clearly was in this case, because if they can lose to these teams, here's the headline. They can lose to anybody. So at this point, I mean, where do they stand? All-Star break, when depending on Katie's still in a knee brace now. Like, I don't know, man. It could get ugly. I do think there's enough here. I still think that it's still just a better situation than last season in terms of their overall talent. So I still am going to hold out a moderate piece of hope here that like it gets put together and they can draw on times where it worked, like in the fourth quarter. But yeah, it's hard to look at this team with a lot of positivity right now.
Yeah, I guess it's like funny too. I'm like, oh, where's Katie's head at? And in some ways, maybe I'm projecting forward too. It's like, well, what about another 10 games from now? You said it. Like they initially said it was 2 weeks to reevaluation. They pretty quickly got to the part where they said it's going to be a full month, potentially, and then beyond that. So again, you've lost these 4 games, and then you look out there, and sprinkled into these winnable games, but bad teams that can clearly beat you, are going to be another meeting with the Suns, and they'll be healthier. The Chicago Bulls, the 76ers, again, before you get into next month when Katie potentially can return. So it's a long road right now. And I think what we'll start to look at beyond this game that'll be on Friday night against the Jazz, we'll see what happens, is what is this signaling to the organization? Again, with that trade deadline coming up, do we need to sacrifice any and everything to get something else that helps us stem the tide? Because that was the other thing we said we didn't have to worry about, was falling too far down the standings and being in a dangerous place. Well, now we're getting really darn close to that. Like it's hard to look at it and not think that you are going to potentially be tumbling down right now, the 4 seed, but virtually tied with Cleveland. Luckily, Miami and New York, you got to watch those teams. But I don't know. It's just I have that lump in my throat right now that I'm trying to push down. I just need to see them beat a bad team. I need to see them beat any team. And right now, it doesn't feel like they can do that. Like, it's just
they got to beat any team.
Win a game.
It's like, yeah, they have to win a game. They have to. Sometimes when you're tail spinning here, like sometimes one game is enough, right? To like sort of just have you re-look at your situation. And
I come back in the fourth quarter with Kyrie would have been enough for me to disregard the other 3.5 quarters of that game, right? Like totally. That would have been enough. But
totally. Right. But look, in the end, because wins and losses are pretty binary at some point, or excuse me, they are binary. They're not pretty binary. That like at some point, like it just doesn't matter enough, right? Like you have to get over the wins and losses, because that's in the end, that's the only thing that counts in the standings. Okay. Nets play Friday. We'll be back on Monday covering over the weekend action. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe over on YouTube to Locked On Nets YouTube. The link will be in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Know that if you're over on YouTube, you're getting some extra stuff with post games when they're not on the West Coast. We're getting live post games, and that's what you're going to get over at Locked On Nets YouTube. So go subscribe there for free.
Never look backwards or you'll fall down the stairs. Rudy Kipling.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. Literally, I think. We will be back again Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.